The Magic Faraway Tree. Chapter 4. The Land of Spells. Rick shot round and down the inside of the faraway tree on his cushion. He came to the bottom, he shot out of the trapdoor there, and landed on the soft green moss. He sat there for a moment, out of breath. "That's the loveliest slide I've ever had," he thought to himself. "Oh, wouldn't I like to do that again?" He had just got up from the moss when the trapdoor at the bottom of the tree opened once again, and Franny shot out on a yellow cushion. Then came Beth, giggling, for she always thought it was a huge joke to slide down inside the tree like that. "What do we do with the cushions?" asked Rick. "Does Moonface want them back?" "Yes, he does," said Franny, picking them up. "The red squirrel always collects them and sends them back to him." As she spoke, a red squirrel, dressed in a sweater, popped out of a hole in the trunk. "Here are the cushions," said Franny, and the squirrel took them. He looked up into the tree and a rope came swinging down. "Moonface always lets it down for his cushions," said Beth. Rick watched the squirrel tie the 3 cushions to the rope end. Then he gave 3 gentle tugs at the rope, and at once the rope was pulled up and the cushions went swinging up the tree to Moonface. "I wish Joe was with us," said Rick as they all went home. "Do you think Aunt Polly will be worried about him?" "Well, we'll have to tell Mother the truth," said Franny. "She is sure to ask where he is." Mother did ask, of course, and the children told her what happened. "I find all this very difficult to believe," said Mother, astonished. "I think Joe is just spending the night with Moonface for a treat. I'll trust Moonface to take care of him tonight, but he must come back tomorrow." Nobody said any more. The girls and Rick felt very tired, and after some hot chocolate and baked potatoes for dinner, they all went to bed. Beth wondered how Joe was getting on at Moonface's. He was getting on all right, though he was very tired of being upside down. It didn't matter how hard he tried to stand the right way up, he always swung back topsy-turvy again. The policeman had put a very strong spell on him. "You'd better try to sleep in my bed," said Moonface. "I'll sleep on my sofa." "I suppose I'll have to stand on my head all night," said poor Joe, and that's just what he did have to do. It was very uncomfortable. Once he lost his balance when he was asleep and tipped off the bed. He almost fell down the slippery slip, but Moonface, who was awake, reached out a hand and caught his leg just in time. "My goodness," said Moonface, "don't go doing things like this in the middle of the night, Joe. It's so disturbing." "Well, how can I help it?" said Joe. "I'll tie your feet to a nail on my wall," said Moonface. "Then you can't topple over when you're asleep." So he did that, and Joe didn't fall down any more. When morning came, he was surprised to find himself upside down, because at first he didn't remember what had happened. "I'll just peep up through the hole in the cloud and see if by any chance the land of spells is there yet," said Moonface. "If it is, we'll go up and see what we can do for you." So off he went up the little ladder and popped his head out of the hole in the cloud to see if the land of topsy-turvy was still there, or if it had gone. There was nothing there at all, only the big white cloud moving about like a thick mist. Moonface slipped down the ladder again. "Topsy-turvy has gone, but the next land hasn't come yet," he said. "We'll have breakfast and then I'll look again. Hello, there's Silky. Stay and have breakfast, Silky dear." "I came up to see how Joe was," said Silky. "Yes, I'd love to have breakfast. It's funny to watch Joe eating upside down. Hasn't the land of spells come yet?" "Not yet," said Moonface, putting a kettle on his stove to boil. "There's nothing there at all, but topsy-turvy is gone, thank goodness." They all had breakfast. Moonface cooked some porridge. "What do you want on your porridge?" he asked Joe. "Syrup? Sugar? Cream?" Joe couldn't see any syrup, sugar or cream on the table. "Syrup," he said. "Please, Moonface." Moonface handed him a small jug that seemed to be quite empty. "Syrup," he said to the jug in a firm voice, and syrup came pouring out as soon as Joe tipped up the jug. Silky wanted cream, and cream came out when Moonface said "cream" to the jug. It was great fun. Moonface went again to see if the land of spells had come. This time he came back excited. "It's there," he said. "Come on. I'd better take some money with me, I think, in case we have to buy the spell we want." He took a small bag down from a shelf, and then he and Silky helped Joe to walk upside down up the branch that led through the hole in the cloud to the little ladder. Up he went with great difficulty, holding on tightly to the rungs of the ladder with his hands. At last he was up in the land of spells. This land was like a big marketplace. In it were all kinds of curious little shops and stalls. All kinds of people sold spells. In some of the shops sat tall wizards famous for their magic. In some of them were green-eyed witches making spells as fast as they could. Outside in the marketplace sat all kinds of fairy folk at their stalls, pixies, gnomes, goblins, elves, all crying their wares at the tops of their high voices. "Spell to make a crooked nose straight," cried one pixie, rattling a yellow box in which were magic pills. "Spell to grow blue daffodils," cried a gnome, showing a bottle of blue juice. "Spell to make cats sing," cried another gnome. Joe could hardly believe his ears. How odd! Who would want to make cats sing? "Now, we must just see if we can possibly find a spell to make you stand up straight again," said Moonface, and he went into a little low shop where a strange goblin sat. The goblin had blue pointed ears, and his eyes sparkled as if they had fireworks in them. "I want a spell," said Moonface. "What for?" asked the goblin. "I have a spell for everything under the sun in my shop. Very powerful spells too, some of them." "Would you like a spell to send you travelling straight off to the moon?" "Oh, no, thank you," said Moonface at once. "I know I look like the man in the moon with my big round face, but I'm nothing at all to do with the moon, really." "Well, would you like a spell to make you as tall as a giant?" said the goblin, picking up a box and opening it. He showed Moonface a large blue pill inside. "Now take that pill and you'll shoot up as high as a house. You'll feel fine. It only costs 1 piece of gold." "No, thank you," said Moonface. "If I grew as big as that, I'd never get down the hole in the cloud back to the Faraway tree. And if I did, I'd never be able to get in at the door of my tree house. I don't want silly spells like that." "Silly?" cried the goblin in a rage. "You call my marvellous spell silly? Another word from you, stupid old round face, and I'll use a spell that will turn you into a big bouncing ball." Silky pulled Moonface out of the shop quickly. She was quite pale. "Moonface, you know you shouldn't make these people angry," she whispered. "You might find yourself turned into a bouncing ball or a black beetle or something, if you're rude to them. For goodness sake, let me ask for the spell we want. Look, here's a bigger shop with a nice-looking witch inside." They all went in. The witch was knitting socks from the green smoke that came from her fire. It was marvellous to watch. Joe wished he wasn't upside down so that he could see her properly. "Good morning," said the witch. "Do you want a spell?" "Yes, please," said Silky in her most polite voice. "We want to make our friend Joe stand the right way up again." "That's easy," said the witch, her green eyes looking in a kindly way at poor Joe. "I've only got to rub a walking spell onto the soles of his feet and he'll be all right. The walking spell will make his feet want to walk, and he will have to stand up the right way to walk on them, so he will be cured. Come here, young man." Joe walked over to the witch on his hands. She took down a jar from a shelf and opened it. It was full of purple ointment. The witch rubbed some onto the soles of Joe's shoes. "Rimini romini reet, stand on your own 2 feet. Rimini romini row, the right way up you must go." And of course you can guess what happened. Joe swung right over, stood on his 2 feet again, and there he was, as upright as Moonface and Silky. Wasn't he glad? Chapter 5. Saucepan Makes a Muddle. Joe, Silky and Moonface were very pleased that Joe was the right way up again. "It feels funny," said Joe. "I feel quite giddy the right way up after standing upside down for so long." "Thank you, witch. How much is the spell?" 1 piece of gold," said the witch. Moonface put his hand into his money bag. He brought out a piece of gold. The witch threw it into the fire, and at once bright golden smoke came out. She took up her knitting needles and began to knit the yellow smoke into the socks she was making. "I wanted a yellow pattern," she said, pleased. "Your piece of gold came just at the right moment." "Gosh, this is a very magic land, isn't it?" said Joe, as the 3 of them walked out of the extraordinary shop. "Fancy knitting socks out of smoke." "Don't let's go home yet, Moonface. I want to see a few more things." "All right," said Moonface, who wanted to explore a bit too. "Come on. Hey, look at the gnome who is selling a spell to make cats sing. Somebody has brought a cat to him. I wonder if the spell will really work." A witch's assistant had brought along a big black cat. He handed the gnome 2 silver pieces of money The gnome took the cat on his knee. He opened its mouth and looked down it. Then he took a silver whistle and blew a tune softly down the cat's pink throat. The cat swallowed once or twice and then jumped off the gnome's knee. "Will it sing now?" asked the witch's assistant. "I won't go back to my witch unless it does." "It will sing whenever you stroke it," said the gnome, turning to another customer. The witch's assistant went off with the cat following behind. Joe took hold of Moonface's arm and whispered to him, "I'm going to stroke the cat. I do want to hear if it really will sing." Moonface and Silky wanted to as well. They giggled to see Joe running softly after the big black cat. He caught up with it. He gently stroked it. And then, oh, what a peculiar thing. The cat stopped, lifted up its head, and sang in a very deep man's voice. "Oh, once my whiskers grew so long I had to have a shave. The barber said it's not the way for whiskers to behave. If you're not careful, my dear cat, they'll grow into beard, and then a billy goat you'll be, or something very weird. Oh, once my tail became so short it hadn't got a wag. The baker said..." But whatever the baker said about the cat's short tail, nobody ever knew. The witch's assistant turned round in surprise when he heard the cat singing, because he knew that he hadn't stroked it. He saw Joe and the others grinning away nearby, and he was very angry. "How dare you use up the cat's singing?" he cried. "You wait till I tell the witch. She'll be after you. And you won't sing if she catches you." "Quick, run," said Moonface. "If he does fetch the witch, we'll get into trouble." So they ran away fast and were soon out of sight of the cat and the assistant. They sank down under a tree laughing. "Oh dear, that cat did sing a funny song," said Joe, wiping his eyes. "And what a lovely deep voice it had. Do you think its whiskers really did grow very long?" Just then the three of them heard a loud noise coming along. Clankety-clack, rattle, bang, crash. "The saucepan man," they all cried. "He's come up here too." And sure enough, it was old Saucepan, grinning all over his face. He had so many kettles and saucepans on that day that nothing could be seen of him except his face and his feet. "Hello, hello," he said. "I guessed you were up here. Been having fun?" "Yes," said Joe. "I'm all right again. Look, it's so nice to walk the proper way up again. And oh, Saucepan, we've just heard a cat sing." Saucepan actually heard what Joe said, but he couldn't believe that he had heard right, so he put his hand behind his ear and said, "What did you say? I thought you said you'd heard a cat sing, but I heard wrong, I know." "No, you heard right," said Moonface. "We did hear a cat sing." "Let's go and explore a bit more," said Joe, so they got up and went off. A witch was selling a spell to make ordinary broomsticks fly through the air. 4 of them watched in amazement as they saw her rubbing a pink ointment onto a broom handle belonging to an elf. "Now, get on it. Say, 'Whiz away,' and you can fly home," said the witch. The elf sat beside the broomstick, a smile on her pretty face. "Whiz away," she said, and off whizzed the broomstick up into the air with the elf clinging tightly to it. "I'd like to buy that spell," said Joe. "I wonder how much it is." The witch heard him. 3 silver pieces, she said. Joe hadn't even got one, but Moonface had. He took them out of his money bag and gave them to the witch. "Where's your broomstick?" she said. "We haven't got one with us," said Joe, "but can't you give us the ointment instead, please?" "Well, I'll give you just a little," said the witch. She took a tiny pink jar and put a dab of the pink ointment into it. Joe took it and put it into his pocket. Now maybe his mother's broomstick would learn to fly. At the next stall, a goblin was selling a spell to make things big. The spell was in big cans and looked like paint. "Just think what a useful spell this is," yelled the goblin to the passers-by. "Have you got visitors coming to dinner and only a small cake to offer them? A dab of this spell and the cake swells to twice its size. Have you got a suit you've grown out of? A dab of this spell and it will grow to the right size. Marvellous, wonderful, amazing and astonishing. Buy, 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 while you've got the chance." Saucepan heard all that the goblin said as he was shouting at the top of his voice. He began to look in all his kettles and saucepans. "What do you want?" asked Joe. "My money," said the saucepan man. "I always keep it in one of my kettles or saucepans, but I never remember which one. I simply must buy that spell. Think how useful it would be to me." Sometimes when I go around selling my goods, a customer will say to me, "Oh, you haven't a big enough kettle." Now I shall just be able to make my kettles just as big as I like. And we can dab the pop cakes with a spell too and make them twice as big. He found his money at last and paid it to the goblin, who handed him a can of the spell. Saucepan was very pleased. He longed to try it out on something. He took the brush and dabbed a daisy nearby with the spell. The daisy at once grew to twice its size. Then Saucepan dabbed a bumblebee, and that grew enormous. It buzzed around Moonface, and he waved it away. "Saucepan, don't do any more bees," he begged. "I expect their stings are twice as big too. Look, let's go to that store over there and buy some treats. It would be fun to make them twice as big." They hurried to the shop, but on the way a dreadful thing happened. Saucepan fell over one of his kettles and upset the can which had the spell in it. It splashed up, and drops of it fell onto Moonface, Silky and Joe, and the old Saucepan Man too. And in a moment they all shot up to twice their size. Silky grew to 3 times her size because more drops fell on her. They stared at one another. How small the land of spells suddenly seemed. How little the witches and goblins looked. How tiny the shops were. "Saucepan, you really are careless," cried Moonface angrily. "Look what you've done to us. Now what are we to do?" Silky clutched hold of Moonface's arm. "Moonface," she said. "Oh, Moonface, do you think we're too big to go down the hole through the cloud?" Moonface turned pale. "We'd better go and see," he said. "Come on, everybody." Frightened and silent, all 4 of them hurried to where the hole led down to the Faraway tree. How little it seemed to the 4 big people now. Moonface tried to get down. He stuck. He couldn't slip down at all. "It's no use," he said. "We're too big to go down. Whatever shall we do?"